Let me know if you can see me now. I had to reboot the link for some reason. Gotta love technology. You guys hear me? All right, there is good. Hopefully I sound clearer than you guys are used to as well. If you couldn't tell, there have been continued upgrades in this channel, and the more you support me, that's going to keep happening. The camera should also look quite a bit better than before. But yeah, so those who haven't, I did 2 previous live streams. One was a drunken one, decided to ditch that idea. The previous one, I think, definitely set the tone for how it's going, and now I have an entire format I've worked out. For those who don't know, it's premium Patreon members can ask me questions. I'll put research into their question and thought, 5 to 10 minutes, and write out a script for it. After that, I'll go through loose ends from my previous videos of the month. And then after that, I'll go over a couple of other things that I don't think deserve a video, but I'd like to talk about. And then it's just Q&A for as long as I feel like, which is usually like 15 minutes or something. So let's get to the Patreon questions first. First one comes, as usual, from Mikhail Lira. He wants to know what my take is on Nvidia supported games versus AMD supported games. Specifically, it is Mikhail's opinion that one competitor is gimping while the other just goes open source. And, frankly, it's the usual opinion I see of, Nvidia GIMP works versus AMD supported games. Sometimes making Nvidia graphics cards work better. And the fact is, I do agree with this. So far, at least in the game, right? I want to be careful because I don't want to be a fanboy here, but at least in the games I've tried, I mean, when I see a Nvidia logo, I actually double take getting the game. And there's been games, like Watch Dogs, many years ago that I got on PS4 just because I didn't want to deal with their bullshit. That I knew it would run like junk on AMD, or like all of those Batman games that I just skipped because they just flat out didn't work on PC. And I think that's true. For those who don't know, it is basically a black box. Basically, my understanding is Nvidia goes in, says, we'll help you finish the game. And it's almost always Ubisoft titles because for some reason Ubisoft is inept at PC programming, always has been. That could be its own video I'll talk about if you want. And then Nvidia doesn't let them see what they programmed and they finish the game. And I don't even know if they're paying Nvidia for it. I sometimes wonder if it's free. I've heard rumors that for some games, Nvidia just does it for free. And I get why people like 4A Games with Metro hire Nvidia. This is a smaller developer making a game with excellent graphics in Ukraine. You can actually look it up. The 4A Games guys are screenshotted on top of a armored bulldozer charging the government when they pushed out the Russian occupiers. So I get why they will take Nvidia's help, but I don't get why Assassin's Creed puts up with this or Far Cry did. And the truth is, it always seems to be temporary, especially with games like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. If you'll notice, they're now AMD sponsored games. And why does that happen? And I think it's because developers can't stomach working with Nvidia for more than 1 or 2 games in a row before they realize what they've done, because it affects their sales. And frankly, from what I can tell, people just don't like working with Nvidia in general. And then when you go to AM, and I want to actually add on one more thing. And Adored's talked about this, and it's an interesting thought. Nvidia has a lot of money, and I could see a world where they would pay develop. Like, let's say AMD, all of the fanboy dreams come true, and AMD goes buck wild, and AMD gets back to 50% market share, which would be crazy, especially again when you consider that they own console, right? Like if they owned console and fit half of the PC market, that's very, very bad for Nvidia. So I could see Nvidia just straight up paying devs, right, to let them finish the game so they can make sure their cards run better. Or is that probably in a lawsuit? But I don't think NVIDIA would be shy from doing it. And if we go to AMD, it seems AMD truly just tries to make the game run as well as it can. In my experience, AMD, and again, right, I'm not trying to be a fanboy. I'm just saying, in my experience, AMD sponsored games always seem to run insanely well. Even on my NVIDIA cards, like I travel for business a lot, I have an MX 150. I played the entire Mars DLC for Far Cry. Well, the last numbered Far Cry. I think that's that'd be Far Cry. That'd be Far Cry 5, I believe. Yeah, it would be. Far Cry 5 with my friend, and it ran excellent on an MX 150 900p stable frame rates. And that's, a GT 1030. And that's when I see AMD sponsored, I'm excited because it usually runs well on everything. When I see NVIDIA sponsored, I honestly rarely pay full price ever. And it's funny when it's a game like Battlefield 5 where it clearly was just a sponsorship besides the ray tracing and that kind of stuff. But I bet Dice actually wanted to add the ray tracing because it's kind of cool from a technical point of view. And it still runs like I know the Vega 64 beats a 2070 in Battlefield 5. So clearly NVIDIA didn't get their black box into that. But I don't think powerful, well programming devs, like I could never see Dice doing that. I could never see. I'm surprised 4A Games still lets them, these other, devs like that do that. Anyways, next question comes from Jeffrey Dutch Solanke. He wants to know what I think about Monolithic Dies going forward on graphics cards. And my opinion is that, well, it's twofold. We'll start first of why we haven't seen it yet, and it's because it's not as easy to do as processors. I mean, processors already are Crossfire. Well, not really Crossfire, but think about it, right? If you build a motherboard that is 2 Xeon processors, you can play a game on it, and it's fine. There's plenty of people on YouTube. The way processors work is there's already individual cores. You just throw crap at it. I mean, not always, right? They try to program as well as they can, but processors are much better at handling random tasks. Whereas with graphics cards, you're talking about 4,000 stream processors that do parallelized tasks. You need to program them much, much, much more specifically. And so think about how they're taking commands from the CPU. The CPU is setting the commands. So you're sending stuff at the CPU that's distributed, which is somewhat true with graphics cards, but the CPU is telling the graphics cards what to do. So if you have multiple graphics cards, they both need to communicate with the CPU. This is much harder to program. Now, that's not to say I don't think multi-GPU could come back, but I really think, I don't know. I think it's in a hiatus now, and somewhat for good reason. I had dual 6950s, and they work great. In the Fermi pre-GCN days, there was this era between like the HD 4000 and 6000 series where Crossfire actually worked like really, really well, honestly, for the most part. And then I noticed it starting falling apart with the 7000 series. And at the same time, NVIDIA's worked pretty well, but they reduced how many cards could use it. And then by Maxwell, it was almost completely removed. And then AMD already limits it to 2 cards with Vega. So I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's going to take a lot more thought put into it to get it working. And the good news is they can still use chiplets. Adored's talked about it. I've talked about it. Other people have talked about it. There's no reason they can't use a single GPU die and then an IO chiplet. And who knows if they could make another kind of controller chiplet separate. It's just that I only think they can have one GPU die at the moment, but they could still separate it out the memory controller and mix and match that. And that would still allow it to scale, which they said about Navi, scalable very well. I think there's benefits to that. I just do not see multi GPU dies really being a thing like forced Crossfire anytime soon. And my personal opinion is they shouldn't worry about multiple graphics cards too much until they can just get it working inherently at the API level to the point that even a game that hasn't programmed for multiple graphics cards, 5.2, and I just tell it to run it, even if it's not programmed, it at least gets me a non-stuttery, 40% performance boost. Even that, I would consider plugging in one of my other mining Vega cards into my desktop just to get that 40% boost as long as it wasn't laggy. So, and do I think Navi will be chiplet based? I don't know. My gut's like 50-50. I think it makes sense, and I think eventually they will be. And they said scalable about Navi, right? So I feel like maybe. And I want to say probably, but we don't have any proof yet. And in fact, I think there was just a leaked Navi PCB. Well, that might still not prove anything yet, actually, too, though, because it still might be on the same. Yeah, I don't know. It's like 50-50 for me. I wouldn't bet on it. I think it will happen eventually, but I don't know if it's even necessary. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll be there yet. I think some of Navi will be chiplet based though to work on APUs and laptops at the same time, and consoles. I think consoles, laptops, and some APUs will share bigger Navi dies. That just makes sense, right? But I don't know if it'll be first gen Navi. Maybe Navi 20 and 2020's Navi follow up will have it though. Okay, let's see what else we got here. So Dean asked me which single product or technology has impressed you the most since you got into PC gaming. So much so that it left a lasting impact on you that has changed the way I experience games. So the funny thing is there's nothing I can think of, right? Like I obviously, if you've follow my channel closely, game on PlayStation plenty. I mean, maybe I'll do a video about my history of console gaming at some point, but my first console, I actually played at a daycare Sega a lot. And then I got an N64 because I liked Star Fox 64 and I adored Paper Mario. And I like Super Smash Bros, of course. So I had an N64, played my friend's PlayStation 1 kind of near the end of that gen, and I actually like Spyro way more than Mario. I liked Final Fantasy and Metal Gear Solid, and I was just blown away by those games. So I got a PS2 for all of those games like Final Fantasy 10. And then PS3, and I played PS4, so it's not like when I game on PC, I'm never going back. I game where the games are. And there's a lot of good games on PlayStation and all over the place, really, right? I'll play it, but I do mostly game on PC at this point, for sure. And I'd say 144 hertz for me is definitely one of those things where, right, like if there's a game, like what was a game I got on console? Like if I know it's limited to like 60 hertz on PC, I'll double check if I want to get it for console, especially if I know they put more effort into optimizing it for console. But I do mostly like 70-80% game on PC now. Although I've been playing a lot of PlayStation the last 2 years just because, since Horizon came out, there's been so many good exclusives. It's absolutely ridiculous. Maybe not as many as the PS3 gen, but these past 2 years have been ridiculous. And the big thing for PC for me, honestly, was the tinkering and customization. I'm a trained engineer. I like tinkering with things. I try to push people away from becoming obsessed with that because I think some people get obsessed with it just kind of as a hobby to do, but aren't actually good at it or need to worry about it. But yeah, it's that overclocking and messing with it that's great. And honestly, I'll never not have a PC just because there are games also on PC like Age of Empires, Mountain Blade. I played Minecraft. Well, it just got into beta. If you can believe it, only 1 million people played Minecraft when I was first playing it. Now it's, I think, up to 100 million sales or close. That type of stuff and that indie thing is just so good on PC. I'll never not game on PC. So even if I went back to PlayStation 5, because they did end up having like a 2080 Ti NVMe SSD for $500, which I'm not saying they necessarily will, but they could. There'll still be plenty of things I'll be playing on PC for sure, just for the customization. And some games are just better on PC or better on console. They really are. And I guess the last thing I'll say, and I'm just throwing it in there because you asked, what have I gotten into since I got into PC that changed? There's Bitcoin, and I'm not going to talk about it a long time. I'll do more Bitcoin videos if you want, but using Bitcoin felt like I was driving a car during the horse and buggy days. I'm still continue to be blown away. That's actually the most blown away thing since I've got into computers themselves. And my specs are a Vega 64 launch edition. I got a bunch of them for mining, but also I gave this big speech to my friends when I got my Vega 64. And this was 2017, yeah, where I said, look, guys, I just think PC prices are about to get absurd. And I'm telling you, Vega's price performance will be nowhere near as good as the previous gens. But either you get this or you're not getting anything for 2 years. So just Most of them had Furies or like an R9 390. And I just said, get Vega or hold your peace. And that's exactly what happened. Vega came out slightly stronger than like a 1080. You kind of, some people would definitely fight me with that. But and it wasn't in stock. It shot up to $1,000. You couldn't get a graphics card all 2018 for less than double the MSRP. That was a good call on that one, and it's aged well. So, but that's what I have, and it's overclocked. I've overclocked the memory. If I really crank up the fans, open up the window during winter, I can get Vega to perform at like 1680 megahertz core. And I mean like what it's actually boosting at, because those who overclock it will know it jumps around a bunch. And the memory I've gotten up to 11. Well, mine's I have it running at 1200 megahertz. So I have it over 20% overclock on this typically. I've turned it down a bit because now that I use my PC for non-gaming tasks, I don't want it to ever freeze while I'm working. But typically it's a 20% overclock, and it performs really well. Performed great in the monitor I tested all yesterday as well. Anyways, all right, so that's the so that's the loose ends in terms of premium questions. Another couple things I'll just fly through quick. I actually don't want to dwell on these things too long, but I wrote down some notes after some of my videos came out. One of them is about Zen 2, what's the catch? It's just funny how you can talk. It wasn't even negative, was it? It was a mostly positive video. I was basically saying, what's the catch to AMD destroying Intel? And everyone started saying, not everyone, I'm minority, said I was stupid for saying they'd have supply problems. It's like, I'm not saying they're going to have supply problems. I'm saying if something's a catch, that's what it's going to be, especially because I really think people are underestimating the demand and the preference they will put to supply and server with the exact same chiplets, guys. And I really think they will do it. I think there's a high chance they'll do a staggered rollout where they're going to have at first is like the 6-core chiplets. And I saw some people go, oh, they'll have 8 cores too because they use 2 quad-core chiplets. Yeah, I never said they wouldn't have 8 cores, guys. I said they might not have 8-core APUs right away because, hello, an 8-core APU needs a full 8-core chiplet, and then the rest of the die space is so, but I think, opening up with quad cores that are, if they even release quad cores, I don't know if they'll need to, but probably quad cores below 100, 6 cores around 120. I'm guessing 8 cores, dual quad core chiplets around the $200 to $300 mark. And I do think the 12 cores will be about $400. And then I think they'll wait a month or two and they will release one super highly binned 16 core model and wait to roll out the cheaper models of that. And it will be in limited quantity and it'll be hard to get. And it might be $600, but considering that's what the 9900K is selling for, we're talking about it's always been 20% higher IPC. Most people said 10 to 20% for gaming and up to 30% for certain tasks, especially AVX workloads. And a new rumor just came out saying that, at least in the testing, motherboard manufacturers have done, that it's at 15% higher IPC. So do the math, people. Right now, the 2700X, you can go on Tech Power Up and look. 2700X, even in 1080p gaming, Intel's greatest advantage, this outdated resolution for a $600 processor to be running, it's like a 10% boost. And if you highly overclock it with a $100 liquid cooler, or more likely $150 liquid cooler, and a $200 motherboard, it's so much more expensive. I can't believe people buy that CPU. They will, you're looking at a 20% boost at most. So we're talking about Zen 2, 15% higher gaming IPC performance, 15% higher IPC performance per gaming. That's already caught up from that. And if it's clocked as fast, it's going to beat it, why don't I think they're bidding 4-core Zen 2 rumors? I don't think they are necessarily going to roll those out right away. Because why? Right? These use AM4. Why do you need a quad core right now? If you do, they're out. They want the newer 6, 8, and 12 cores out because those will provide better gaming performance. But they've got a lot of unfilled stock, and I wouldn't be surprised if prices are a little inflated at first. I mean, think about it. I think the initial rumors were they intended to charge 100 to 150 bucks for this 6 core, but if it is 15% higher IPC, I'm sorry, you're talking about an R5, 3300X that's 6 cores, 12 threads, and competes with beats the i5s in gaming. And there's no reason they couldn't charge 180 bucks for that. There's 6 cores, and then just wait to release the quad cores, right? Wait, let all the stock of the old 1700s, 2600s, 2700s clear out, and then lower prices a little and drop the quad cores. That's why I don't think anyone's talking about it, because there's just no rush to release it, and save the quad cores, use 2 of those chiplets for an 8-core model that people will pay more money for. I'll also go past the secret sauce thing too, just because I just thought it was so funny when people said these things like, no, the PS4 is secret sauce. It has GDR5. It's not a secret. You just said. See, this is my problem. My point with that video, which maybe I wasn't clear about, my point with that video was that people, I just don't think understand console specs well, right? And I get how this happens, right? The people who are the most knowledgeable about PC hardware tend to talk about PCs because that's what they like, right? And then the people who like consoles don't know what the fuck they're talking about almost ever. It is so cringeworthy to hear like a PlayStation podcast start talking about leaked PS5 specs, and it's like, oh, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's just so wrong. And, and so it's very rare that, and if I may toot my own horn, that you have someone like me that appreciates both, right? The PS4 is insanely well designed, and I'm almost done writing the notes for I'm almost done. We'll see. It's going to be a lot of work. It'll probably be like a 5-part series on the coming console war, and really analyzing the previous gen specs, going over how many ROPs. These are things people look over. And I think the PS4 is one of the best designed gaming pieces of hardware in history, especially when you think of how they did the cooling, right? They fit a 7870 and the equivalent of an i3 into something just tiny. I think it's very impressive. But yeah, my point with the secret sauce stuff is people tend to go, well, the Xbox One X has an RX, and I've seen this exact phrase. The Xbox One X has an RX 570, but it runs games in 4K because of the secret sauce. No, that's bullshit. It has an RX 580 with a 384-bit bus and 11% more stream processors. It's essentially a 590 with highly overclocked RAM. That's why it performs better than a 570, because it's not a 570. And this isn't secret sauce. These are publicly available specs you can look up. All right, I'll stop dwelling on that. Oh, well, I'll also say I think it's a disservice to the devs that make good use of those specs and make beautiful looking games to just go, that's secret sauce. It's like, no, Naughty Dog and Santa Monica are just that good at programming, guys. I do wonder how good some of those games like Killzone would look on a PC if they really programmed to the metal with like Vulkan or something. It probably looked pretty ridiculous. But yeah, I'm going to skip this. Yeah, let me just cross this out. I don't want to talk about this. This is stupid. So yeah, the last thing I'll talk about is changes to the channel that are coming. There's a new mic here. I have a new camera. The camera actually is 4K capable. And I've tested it. I kind of think the 1080p looks almost as good, frankly. And for now, I am going to stick to 1080p 30 frames a second. I must speak for myself. Sometimes I'm traveling. Frankly, sometimes I'm driving, and I'll pull up a YouTube video and put it in a corner and then pull up Google Maps and just listen to it while I'm driving. And I hate when they only allow you to pull up 720p 60 or 480p. Like, this is what does this bring to the table, right? Like, what? Showing me talking at 60 frames instead of 30, except doubling the bandwidth you use. For now, I'm not going to bother with it unless I think there is a video that would benefit. It makes editing substantially quicker. It streamlines. everything I'm doing. I'm going to stick with 1080p 30, but as you can see, it's way, way, way clearer now. The mic's way better. I think that's what's important. And I don't want to move to a higher resolution until it's just straight up like 4K and I have a 5K monitor to edit it well on. I'm not going to 4K, just shoehorning it in. And I think a lot of tech channels do that. I know where it comes from. I would have like a 4K monitor and go, YouTube's the only thing that uses 4K. Oh, why can't I use my new 4K monitor on your tech channel? But did it really add anything? I don't think it did. Feel free to tell me if you disagree, but I really don't think it matters. And so I don't want to go to 4K until I have better editing software and a 5K monitor that really lets me edit it well. And frankly, that'll probably come if it does come at the end of this year. I want a new PC with more cores, more RAM, much more storage, and the ability to really handle the extra data of 4K well. So that probably won't come for a while. And the last thing I'll say is there was music on my last video. One of my favorite bands told me I can use their music. Let me know if you think about that. I don't know what I think, really. Adding music or not, I'm probably going to use it as little as possible, but there will be videos that I throw music in the intro and the outro, try to keep it fairly mellow. I tried on purposely with the last video, even though it was a rock song, to turn down the intro music because I just don't want that thing that some channels do where you like turn on a channel, just blares music and you're like, fuck this. I'll never do that, but let me know what you think of the music in general. I think it kind of adds a little bit of flair, but we'll see. And it's really cool that they're letting me use all of their music. Feel free to check them out. Their name's Sahara. No, it's not the stupid rap band that no one's heard of this band either, but I have links in my about section. And let's see. But yeah, and the point is the quality is continuing to increase. The more you fund me, and people are funding me, the more you share my videos, the more you get more people to subscribe. I will keep making the quality higher and I will do more and more and more videos. No expense was spared. I would normally not spend as much as I did on the display I'm reviewing, and I'll probably film tonight the rest of the material I need for it and edit it together, hopefully. But the unboxing's done. I should get that out to you guys by Tuesday. And by the end of next week, I'm hoping to have both part 1 and 2 of the video done. And I did really interesting stuff. I mean, 960 hertz captures to look at input latency. Spoiler alert, like none. I tried it out with all different types of devices, and this costs substantially more than what I would normally spend on a display. And I don't really need it. Specifically, my old one worked well, but I want to be able to test HDR for you guys if I need to. I want to be able to do 4K 120 hertz testing if I need to. That's why I got it. The more you guys fund me, the more I will get interesting things that will allow me to do new types of videos. Okay, so that's all of that. Now I will go to Q&A. I did see someone ask about a minute ago about the Navi PCB. I actually got done while I was preparing for this watching part of BuildZoid's video, which is actually a hardcore overclocking. I noticed that guy when I started overclocking my 390X, that guy, and 7970. That guy, I love the name, actually hardcore overclocking. How often do you see these ridiculous tech websites say they tried really hard to overclock when all they did is pull out MSI Afterburner? What a bunch of bullshit. And they don't even put in the extra thing to make it give you, they don't even push it to the extra bit that you can on MSI by checking the unofficial overclocking mode. It's a complete joke. But he does real overclocking, and he looked at Navi, and I think the conclusion, I didn't see much there. The biggest thing I saw is it looks like AMD's putting much more money into the voltage and amperage measurement and regulation, which I know is a major, weird, cheap out weakness of previous AMD cards. That has probably been one of the bigger factors holding back efficiency. And it also, of course, is crazy over-engineered. He said it looked like the PCB was at least as high quality, nicer than a 2080, he said. Not necessarily in performance, but in build quality. And that's something you expect from AMD. I know people give them shit about their coolers, but their coolers work for what they're meant to do. And the actual PCB, VRMs, and longevity themselves, you can abuse the living shit out of a Radeon card with voltage and it won't break. It'll just turn off, you know. And he said that as GDR6, 8 gigabytes. There's not much to say about it. It has, unless the last minute talked about something I missed, because I didn't watch the entire video. But I mean, it's, you know, it's everything we've heard of. 8 gigabytes of GDR6, over engineered like most AMD cards. All right. So yeah, feel free to ask questions now. There's now 88 people on, which is I think over triple what was there the first live stream I did. Maybe I can scroll up too. I know you guys have been asking questions the whole time. In the future, it might be good to wait for the Q&A section at the end. Let's see. Nice screensaver in the background. Yeah, wait till I review it. Yeah, let's see. Well, I will say this about, I really don't want to talk about the display thing much, but it's the best gaming display, I think. And hold out, guys. Don't spend over $1,000 on a monitor unless there's something specific you need it for yet, I think. I'll say that. Because this is the future, I think, the technology this one uses. So you think we won't see 16-core 32 Ryzen 3 at launch, but 1224 instead? I think we could, but again, what's the catch, right? I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying, yeah, let me put it this way. I would be surprised if Ryzen doesn't have over 10% better gaming IPC than Ryzen 2. I would be surprised if it can't clock above 4.7 gigahertz. I would be surprised if for the 12-core model, they charge more than $500. I would not be surprised if they didn't launch the 16-core right away. If there's a catch, I think it's a staggered rollout. But I do think they will launch a 16-core this year. I do. I think they will. However, man, seeing that the 10-core Intel's delayed till next year, most likely, I don't know. Maybe they won't. They just don't need to. I mean, think of it. They're going to have an 8-core Intel that uses more energy competing with, I don't know, it could get bloody for Intel, guys. Let's see what else there is. You think AMD stock will spike at ComputeX? As usual, this isn't financial advice, but I do own AMD shares. I own a lot of company shares, though. But I wouldn't have bought AMD shares unless I already did my research ahead of time. So I'm not telling you to buy it, I guess. That's worth mentioning, right? Do I think AMD stock? I mean, look, I think you got to be careful because AMD goes up and down because they both have a lot of FUD going against their stock by, frankly, traders who have no idea what the fuck they were talking about when they said AMD's overvalued, and now they know they're not. I don't think AMD is going below $20 again anytime soon. I'll say that. Now, where will it go? I don't know. I could see it going to almost any price, honestly. But let's put it this way. If it gets above 50 or towards $100 a share, really sell half of what you hold. Because it's not that it won't eventually get there again, but man, I remember when AMD went to $32 and I sold, I think, a fourth of my shares just because it was like, look, I think it's going to get to 32 again, but I don't think it should be worth 32 before Ryzen 3 comes out. So I don't know. I think AMD is a decent midterm investment, probably a good long-term investment. We'll have to see, but I think they've got a bright few years ahead. How do I feel about Intel's 45-watt TDP? I don't know. This is the problem, is not like I've listened to Intel shareholder meetings before. It's just hilarious how they continue to say, 10 nanometers on track. It's like, when are one of these, and I think they are, some of the analysts do get mad at them, but like someone in one of those meetings just has to go, why are you lying? Why are you calling this 45 watt? Why are you saying it boosts to 5 gigahertz? It's going to boost one core to 5 gigahertz for a second. Not even a second, a millisecond. It's going to be running at 2 gigahertz most of the time. The 6-core Mobile i9 right now underperforms the quad core from the previous gen most of the time because of overheating. I don't know. Intel, I get what they're doing, but Intel pretty soon is going to make no one listen to them. And it's going to happen right when AMD has better products. So I don't know. Those TDP things are just a complete joke, honestly. Now I do have a quad core laptop that I love from Intel. It has 8 threads. It's and think, right? I never thought I'd see an 8-thread i7 in a $700 laptop last year, but here we are. It is 15 watts, and I did undervolt the laptop. And yeah, I can get that to stay stable at 1.8 gigahertz, all 8 threads running Battlefield 5, while using like 8 watts. And I just keep it down there so there's never any throttling in that thin laptop. It's a 13-inch. It's smaller than a MacBook Air, so thermal is a premium, and I could see that thing actually boosting to 3 gigahertz, 4 gigahertz with like 25 watts, but rarely do they give it that much TDP. All right, let's see. I agree that AMD should punch as hard as they can, and that's why I think they will launch a 16 core this year. That's what I said. I think they will launch the R9 3850X. I think they'll launch it. I think it, and guys, 4.7 gigahertz. I think it's very realistic to think it could be 5.2 gigahertz boost and like 4.8 gigahertz base. I think they may just make it like 150 watts and say, fuck it, Intel's dead. But that one will probably cost like $700. And I do wonder if they would roll out the 3800X right away and in what quantities. I'm just saying, expect limited quantities, right, in the 16 cores at the very least. But I do think they should go for the knockout punch. I agree. Let me see what else there is here. People talking about their APUs. Guys, their APUs are always a gen behind. I don't know why this is weird to you. And Zen 3 is coming next year. So what does that mean? Stop, like when people go, oh, their APUs are going to stay quad core. No, they're not. Just the first ones are. They're always a gen behind. The first APUs for Ryzen 3000 are probably going to come out before the rest, or at least at launch. And they're going to be, enhanced Zen Plus architecture. I think on 14 nanometer still is what I actually heard. And quad cores with, higher clocks to the Vega integrated graphics. But by the end of the year, I think they will roll out an 8-core APU. We've seen this on every leaked slide. Just because they're doing some of these cheaper and it makes sense, right? Why would they need an 8-core APU that can game as well as like a 560 or 570 for $100? They won't. They're going to charge $200 for that, but they should still have a $100 APU. And a monolithic die actually works pretty well price performance wise for manufacturing below $100, which I've talked about how Intel may have an advantage below $100 next year and late this year. Haynes logging off. All right, good night. This will be uploaded, of course, with timestamps probably. Yeah, I think they might be 12 nanometer too, Santa Fizzy, but I saw people saying they were or were not. So I don't know if some of them might stay 14 nanometer, right? Exactly. It keeps costs cheap. And I have heard rumors from some people that told me that there may be a floor in how cheap Ryzen can get, that it scales best for server. It allows them to make 64-core server chips that cost less than half as much to make as Intel's weaker 28 cores. It's going to be a bloodbath in server. And then when you get to desktop, it's 2 chiplets and you bend them, and it's like less expensive than Intel's, but not half as expensive because you still have to have an IO die, which costs money. And you still need to, have a more complex PCB, which costs money. But it's still cheaper than Intel for more performance. But what I was told is once you get down to $100, there may be limitations. Think about it. They still need that IO die. That IO die just costs something. So I heard that they might not be able to sell Zen 2 chips for less than $100 easily. And for that reason, I would assume they'll keep around some of this other stuff. And frankly, I think I've said it before, they're going to use Global Foundry's new 12 nanometer non-FinFET true 12 nanometer. That's better than the 10 nanometer FinFET, as it turns out. And certainly not as good as Intel's 10 nanometer, but closer to Intel's 10 nanometer than to a 10 nanometer FinFET TSMC has. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept making a version of Zen 2 that's a monolithic die with like 6 cores and less 8, and that could also be a replacement to Kabini and the Bobcat series, which I thought the Bobcat series was legendary for netbooks at the time. Um, they're going to keep, and there was a rumor that just came out too about how AMD is going to split off the Zen design into a lower power version again, basically a successor to AM1, which I hope. Again, I loved AM1. It's like $20 motherboards and $40 quad cores. A successor to that still uses monolithic dies would make sense so they can get them cheap again. All right, let's see. What do I think about waiting for Zen 3 to build my new system? It depends on what games you play. You'll probably be fine. Seriously. The 1070, look, here's the thing. When I knew about the RX 480, I sold my 390X because I knew the RX 480 was going to be close for half the price. And the truth is, I sold my 390X literally the week before the 480 came out. I think before the 470 came out, because I even said, fuck it, I'll just lose 10% performance or something. And I sold it for over $300. And then the next, I got a 8 gigabyte 470 at launch, and it was an 8 gigabyte 470 with 8,000 megahertz RAM too. So it was as strong as a 480. It's like 5% weaker, and I got it for $200. So I just saved $100. So that 1070. What I'm saying is, in a month, you might want to sell for $200 right before Navi comes out, because the RX 3070 is probably going to be 20% stronger or something, 30% stronger, and cost $200. Although be ready in the morning because they will sell out. And your i5, look, I don't think 6 threads is enough long term at all. I will say it. I have an 8-thread i7. I'm still very happy with it, but I understand it will be mid-range. I would say it's mid-range now, actually. I would say it's lower mid-range already. And it will be low end within 2 years. Well, not low end. It does have very high IPC and clock speed, but lower mid range within a year, definitely. And here's the thing, though: it has 8 threads, and games. Look, the consoles are going to have 8 cores. 6 isn't going to cut it, but it depends what you play, because it's not like they're just going to become useless, or like it's not like it's going to stutter right away either. It's just keep in mind that 6 threads will become stuttery in a couple of years. I think you're fine, though, to wait for Zen 3. Zen 3 is coming next year. And my opinion is what Zen 3 will be is better than Zen Plus, but not as good as Zen 2 in terms of an increase. Zen 3, I think, is going to be like a 10% performance boost instead. Well, Zen Plus actually brought like 5% higher clock speeds and 5% higher IPC. I think this will bring maybe 5 to 10% higher IPC, and then like a 2% clock speed increase, and almost no clock speed increase, but a small IPC increase. But I do think it will cut down power consumption substantially, and it will probably come with new features. And who knows, they might even add a few more cores. So if you can wait for Zen 3, I don't think it's a horrible idea. And if all you're doing is gaming, as long as your games are running at the frame rates you want, as long as you're not recording while you're using that i5, I think it's okay. So someone just asked me, I like this question. The IO die probably costs $9 to make. That would surprise me if it was that cheap. But I'm not going to question Adored. But let's just say it's $10 to make it a round number. Let's just say it is. The IO die is $10. That's still $10. And each chiplet is probably going to cost about $20, I think. So it's fine when your chiplets cost $20 to $50, $100. If it's the good deals, it costs much more. But you're using 2 of them, or even if you just put 1 of them on there, which I think would limit. Really think about what that would do, though. You're still adding that $20. You still have the more complicated PCB, and they want to make a profit. So sometimes that's the problem, is that you can't remove that final $20. And you see this with graphics cards. Eventually, the fan is the problem with cheap graphics cards, right? Like you'll see a DDR4 version of a GT 1030 that's only $10 cheaper. And it's because, well, the PCB costs money, the fan costs money. At a certain point, the graphics card starts at $50. So removing GDR5 only removed $10 and it cut performance in half. I do think it could make a problem. Still, I'm just telling you what I've heard, that there is a floor in how cheap Ryzen can get. Um, maybe they can get down to $80, but the profit margins start to become slim. Whereas they're probably making gigantic profits, honestly, on Ryzen 3 at the higher end here. Which good for AMD. I want them to make high profits at least for a couple years. What do I think the most likely performance Navi 10 will target? So this isn't a live stream, and I'm speaking without doing research before I talk. So people don't hold me to this as a prediction, but I think Navi 10 could be more powerful than people give it credit for. But I also, if you will see in my like older video, what does Navi have to be, right? Where I say at least a 3870 for its time. I don't want to overhype it because I think Vega was overhyped. But we're talking about 8 GB of GDR6. I think I've heard that they're going to use faster GDR6 than Nvidia does, not 1.4, but possibly 1.6 gigabit per second. However, it is the cut down Navi 10 that they're launching with, and from what I would guess, decently cut down. And it's so they can get decent yields this early. And I think, I mean, the math I did is that it should easily be stronger than Vega 64 by about 10 to 20%, which I believe is what the leak said too. So think about that. If Vega 64 is, if we're being honest, 5% weaker than a 2070, 15% stronger than that. I mean, I think it's going to beat the 2070. It might be narrowly, but I think it's going to narrow. Yeah, I think it'll narrowly beat that. I believe Adord said that there's rumors they're going to do a special edition. So hopefully that means they will do a limited release of full Navi 10. The rumor is, by the way, it's like full Navi 10 special edition. Then they slightly cut it down for the PS5, and then they slightly cut it down more for the 3080. That's the rumor I'm going off of. And I hope the full Navi 10 will use even faster RAM and hopefully 16 gigabytes, which it could. I've heard they might do that. And that could be stronger than the 2080. That adds another 20%. I think the special edition Navi 10 could beat the 2080 narrowly. And then I think Navi 20 we'll just have to see. But it sounds like Navi 20 isn't going to be as much stronger than Navi 10 as we might have hoped. But it could still add another 30%, right? And that puts it in 2080 Ti territory. So that's pretty cool, I think. I'm calling it now. Navi should outperform Vega by 30%. It could. Don't be surprised either way. What I would say is you have to clarify which Navi, right? Full Navi, the one with faster memory coming out a year from now and more enhancements for the PS5. I think it will. The Navi that we get now that's cut down with slightly slower GDR6 for only 250. And who's complaining it's 250? I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced, you know. I don't think the PS5 will be as strong as Vega 64. I think for 100% it's going to crush Vega 64. I think releasing a console with Vega 64 performance would be a mistake. Now, I obviously could be wrong, and I have a suspicion that Sony's going to have two versions. Like they might do PS5 and PS5 Pro at launch, and there will be a $500 or $550 PS4 Pro, and then a $400 or cheaper normal PS4. That version might be as strong as Vega 64, and that one might be for just. I mean, a lot of people still have 1080p displays, right? So they might do that. And when you say Vega 64, guys, if the do the math, if the RX 3080 is going to beat Vega 64 by 15% and only cost 250, you think Sony's paying 250 for those things a year from now? They're paying like 150. Come on, guys. And the 3070 is supposed to be under 200 and be as strong as Vega 56, these consoles are going to crush the Vega 56. And frankly, if they don't, they're not going to sell well because that's stupid. Because that'd be so dumb. And these guys aren't idiots. I hope not, at least. What's my predictions for the next 5 years in terms of GPU advancement? Well, I think Navi is going to bring prices down. I think a reckoning's coming to that. I think the first reckoning in PC prices will be Zen 2 and Navi, and it's going to make everyone who bought a 9900K and 2080 Ti look like a blaring idiot. And then I think the PS5 is going to come out and make everyone realize not that AMD was milking, but AMD wasn't giving you a bargain. I mean, guys, the 570 selling for 130, that's a 3-year-old graphics card that uses a 230 millimeter die. It's not expensive to make. It's using GDR5. GDR5 was introduced on the 4870 over a decade ago. It doesn't cost like I don't want to say AMD's milking, But Nvidia's elevated prices is allowing AMD to charge more too. And I think the final nail in the coffin of how dumb prices have been will be when the PS5 launch blows away a 2080 Ti for $500 and everyone goes, "Holy shit, is that really all it costs to make these things?" And then Sony's going to go, "Yes, that's all it cost." And then the Xbox will come out and maybe even be stronger for less money. So, yeah, I don't know, guys. And I could be wrong. I could be. I could. But I really think that there's going to be egg on people's faces when they see how much cheaper. I did not call you an idiot. Did I miss a comment you said? Oh, you have a 2080 Ti and a 9900K. Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think you're necessarily stupid if you have that. I think the people that defend it like it was like it was good price performance are idiots. Because there's what argument would you make, though, if you got a 9900K? Which, if you're in esports, I guess that's what you get. And you would, but here's my problem with the 2080 Ti. You're already spending $1,300. Your PC probably costs $3,000 total. I hope, right? Right? Or you're getting the fastest SSD and 64 gigabytes of RAM if you have a 2080 Ti. Just get a Titan RTX. Money is clearly not. I've always said this since the 1080 Ti. Get a Titan instead of a 1080 Ti because the 1080 Ti usually costs $700. It's like it's not worth $500 more to get that extra 15% performance and more RAM. And I mean like the final version of the Titan Pascal that wasn't cut down. Like just get that. You get it. You clearly your build costs $3,000. You won't spend the extra $500 for another 20%. Just get the Titan. If money doesn't matter to you, prove it. Buy the Titan. This is my problem. Is I don't think a lot of people who have the 2080, if you really make six figures, which I get it. I get if you make six figures, and you're just going to I get that your time's limited and you want a game with the best resolutions. Then why aren't you getting a Titan, peasant? You fucking peasant. Get a Titan. I'm not kidding. Like you're paying that much money. Just get a 24 gigabyte Titan. Go for it. And I don't get these 80 Ti's that are cut down cards, 11 gigabytes of RAM. It's an odd number. They're just milking you for that last $20 for the RAM. That's so sad. Come on, guy. Get a Titan. Get the full card. I hate buying cut down cards too, by the way. I bought a 3090X. I got a 7970, even though the 390X was like only 8% stronger than the 390 for another $50. I'm an engineer. I have a weird thing with non-cut down cards. Yeah. So like if I got Turing, I'm getting a Titan. Like, right? Like I'm getting a Titan. Message restricted. Okay. Let me see. I ranted there for a while. What else is there? I think 250 to 300 for Vega 56 performance, for which yeah, I don't know which one that's referencing. Sorry for asking again, do you think dual chiplet 8 and 12 core Ryzens will have an advantage in certain workloads? Yes. I know they're going to crush an AVX. The rumor I read, this is like a deep cut, but for those who don't know, when you run an AVX workload, and I think this is going to destroy the market share of Intel's servers, and no one's talking about this. When you run an AVX workload, it uses more energy because it's using more resources, and it is a substantial performance increase for running something on AVX. But Intel clocks their CPUs, I believe, like 200 to 300 megahertz, sometimes more than that, lower, even on servers when they're running AVX workloads, which they always are on some servers. The rumor is that Zen's architecture, Zen 2's, one of the specific things they tried to do is make it so it doesn't use more energy with AVX workloads. You know what that means? That means those Xeons that say 2.5 gigahertz but actually run at 1.8 gigahertz are actually going to run at like 2. It's actually going to be on AMD 30% higher clocked in 64 cores. And I think that AVX advantage is going to be insane for AMD. So that's a workload where, depending on how you count IPC, AMD is going to have a massive increase. Do I think there will be some things where the monolithic die was, well, it's not monolithic now and it's running fine, isn't it? I don't know, right? I want to wait for Zen 2. I think there may be some workloads where it works less, but where it has a performance deficit. But I hate this kind of conjecture because it's like you're being pessimistic to keep people in check when you could be optimistic. It's like Well, they've changed design, so I'm sure there's some workloads where Intel's better. And I'm like, based on what link? Based on what source? They could just as likely, if you're pulling stuff out of your ass, be better than everything than Intel. And I'm not saying they will be. It's just let's wait for the reviews before we say it's going to be worse at gaming or this because of the multi-die approach. Because there are some workloads where it might be better. Elon Musk. And you had a real bad shareholder meeting lately, huh? Let's see. Yeah, that's Gus. That's my parents' dog. By Ampere. I think Ampere is more and more sounding like the replacement of Volta. So if you want to spend, I don't know, they'll probably charge $5,000 for the Titan amp next, right? Sounds cool though. So Nvidia will buy it. Will Intel crush AMD in 4 to 5 years? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Right? I don't know. I don't know because we don't know how fucked they are internally, right? Go back in time to when AMD was dominating with Athlon, and you'll remember Intel came out of nowhere with Core 2 and blew AMD out of the water if you watch those reviews. And then AMD came back with Phenom 1 and everyone was like, "Here comes AMD." And then Phenom 1 wasn't very good. Now Phenom 2 was good, but not good enough to take any performance crowns quite. There was like 1 year though where I would say Phenom 2 was better. But then Intel came back with Nahum and better and better and better. And then Sandy Bridge put a nail in the coffin. So when people go, Intel will strike back in 5 years. It's like, well, everyone thought AMD would, and it took them over a decade. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm not saying they can't, though, right? Intel's a giant company with a bunch of money. That doesn't mean you can assume they're going to crush AMD. I hate when people do that. And people used to always say that about Microsoft against Sony too. Like, well, Microsoft's a bigger company, which they're actually not. They're just a more profitable company. And they just go, they have an unlimited amount of money, so they're going to crush PlayStation, and they didn't. And I would say the same about Intel. Could Intel swing back hard? I think they probably will, but I wouldn't assume it either way. And we don't even have rumors of what their next gen architecture is going to be. All we have is a bunch of PowerPoint slides that they haven't been able to execute on for the past 5 years. So I wouldn't trust a goddamn thing Intel says. Yeah, I know they stole Jim Keller, and it took 5 years to get Ryzen. So that's why when people say, oh, Intel will come back in 2021, I think you put money on 2023. It's going to be a while, guys. There's things they can do and tell them, but there were things AMD didn't tell then. And that's what I worry about is that Comet Lake is going to be not even Phenom 1, but just like an Athlon refresh that no one cares about. And then they'll come out with it like I think they said they're skipping Sunny Cove even on desktop. Who knows? Maybe we'll get 110 nanometer like Willow Cove or something, Golden Cove generation that acts like the Phenom 2. But AMD could just as easily keep hitting them hard. We'll have to see. Let's see. Intel just qualified. Let's see. Intel qualifies 10 nanometer. 5 hours ago. Intel promises 10 nanometer. See, but I've been saying this. I think they'll have 10 nanometer laptops because it's okay if they only clock to 4 gigahertz as long as you get that density and power savings. I think Intel might hold on to the premium laptop market. I do. I think they might. I'll say it. That's the one market I think they've got some advantages on. So that doesn't surprise me, but I don't believe a goddamn thing Intel says about desktop or server. I don't know how they can beat AMD's chiplet design and server or Threadripper especially. Intel is cooking something up, but what if they're not? What if they're not? I'm not saying they're not, but I hate assumptions. I hated too when people said, because they said this about AMD. Oh, AMD is about to hit them with Bulldozer. It's like, I don't know. What if Bulldozer's not good? And everyone's like, how would that happen? They've been sitting around with Phenom for this long. Bulldozer has to be good. Doesn't have to be. It could be, though. Again, I'm not just shitting on Intel. I'm just saying I wouldn't assume either way. There's a massive price gap where the 2070 Ti should be. And that's something I'm waiting, though, right? I've done a million Navi videos, and I said a lot of stuff about Navi before a lot of other tech channels did. So I'm just going to wait until we're closer to the reveal. But the question I have is if Navi, because Navi sounds like, Navi does sound like it's might even be better than what I thought it would be. And I mean, like, let's humor this for fun, guys. Let's say, and this is what I hope happens. Let's say that the RX 3080 is 250. Although, frankly, if it's this powerful, I'm sorry, I think they'll charge 300. So let's be realistic. Let's say it's $300 and it's like 7% behind the 2080, right? Like it's $300 and technically the Radeon 7 stronger, but only barely. And it's within shooting distance of the 2080 to the point that in some games, like in Battlefield 5, for example, or some other recent games, the Navi card actually ends up beating the 2080 by like 10%, but on average it's 5% weaker, and then it's $300. I don't know how Nvidia responds to that. I think a 2070 Ti wouldn't cut it unless they're going to charge $300 for the 2070 Ti, and then what are they going to do? 250 2070, and then like $50 separating these cards. I mean, maybe then what? The 2080s 350. They would just have to do a full refresh. And that's what I think NVIDIA is preparing, by the way. I've said it before. If you watch my NVIDIA predictions thing, I do the thing where I talk about what they could do. And then I talk about if Turing went all out. And I think if you'll notice in like my 7nm Ampere video, I start talking about how I really, really think they're just going to they're just going to do a lighter refresh, but that they're going to have to do one because Navi sounds pretty good. I think you're going to get a 20% across the board performance increase, right, on everything in their lineup, and they'll call and it's been long enough now. Navi's coming out long enough away that I think they might just call it the 3080 Ti and the 3080. I think that's what they should do. They need a 20% performance boost. They need to lower prices by $100 on everything. The 2080 needs to become, 500. 2070 needs to become 400. The 3060 needs to become 300. That's what I think NVIDIA will probably do if they're smart. But we'll see, because if they don't do it before Navi comes out, I just don't know what you do with even a $600 2080 when a $300 Navi is sitting there. You're not lowering that to 400. That would make no sense. Will I get a PS5 on day one if it's good? Right. I remember when the PS4 was coming out, and I said, I usually don't get consoles at launch. And I said, I'll get it if it launches with, this is how long ago it was. It's not even a thing anymore. Zipper's defunct. I'll get it if it launches with MAG, SOCOM, a Dark Souls game, or Killzone, and it launched with Killzone. So I got the PS4 at launch. Also, I got the PS4 at launch because I knew it would sell out. I got several PS4s at launch and resold some. But I'll get the PS5 at launch if it has an incredible launch lineup, and I think it's going to, though. So I'll say that. I think it might be the best launch lineup in history. And I'm not just being a fanboy. I think if you look at Sony's devs, it's like, I don't know. It sounds like a new Killzone is going to be at launch. It sounds like Death Stranding is going to be a launch game. It sounds like even Ghost of Tsushima may be a launch game. It sounds like what's Polyphony up to? Right? Next Gran Turismo, maybe a launch PS5 game. I think they're going to have like 6 big launch exclusives, and that's all it takes for it to dominate the market, at least for the first year. That's the only thing I'm not sure about is AMD pricing. What if AMD and Ryzen are what the rumors say, but then the price are just equal to those of Intel and NVIDIA? It won't matter for Ryzen. A $600 16 core that's twice as strong as the 9900K is a massive improvement. Now for Navi, no, they need their market share back, and they need it badly. I don't think they're going to overcharge. I think they'll charge, again, if the RX 3080 is as strong as the 2080, I think they'll charge $300 instead of $250. I'll say that. I've said it. I have a video. I think, well, we know now for sure because Mark Cerny confirmed that the PS5 is going to be backwards compatible with PS4. But and if you guys listen to the podcast Sacred Symbols, which just for a gaming podcast is very funny. If you like me, they're not like me, but they have similar senses of humor. Do you like Sacred Symbols is an excellent podcast, and the way they talked about it is, it would be like when they said, and when they talk about the PS5, they'll go, And I assume the PS4 will have backwards compatibility. And then one will just go, it would be insane if it didn't. People would be clawing at their eyes in the streets. And I agree. And now we know the PS4 will be back, PS5 will be backwards compatible with PS4. And I think PS3 and PS2 are likely, honestly. And I did a video on why. It has to do with the fact that eventually they need to upgrade PS Now servers, which they're going to. They just announced they have 700,000 PS Now subscribers. It's defeating all other gaming streaming services combined, making Sony hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I know people shit on PS Now, but it's working. They can't keep you. They're using cell processors that are 45 nanometer right now, still in those servers. They're going to have to upgrade them to Zen. And that means they'll have emulators running PS3 games. If they can get emulators running PS3 games in their servers, they can get them running in the PS5, I think. And I think they will have PS3 backwards compatibility. What I'm really excited for is if it will accept the discs and upscale it to 4K. Wouldn't that be incredible if I could play Demon Souls again and it wouldn't be at a shitty frame rate? But we'll have to see. I wouldn't bet my house that it will have PS3 backwards compatibility, but I personally have always thought it's likely. Let's see, what else do we have? Days Gone hasn't done well with reviews. I didn't buy it. I mean, I like Sony Bend. I mean, what's its final Metacritic? Let's see, 72. I've heard it's fun, right? And I've liked games that are 70s before. But yeah, I didn't get it at launch, and I have way too many games to play right now. I haven't even beaten God of War yet. I'm still beating God of War. That'll be in my monitor review. I'll show some gameplay. I need to beat that. I haven't even started Sekiro, and I love Demon Souls. Can you believe that? I need to play Last Guardian. And then, like, I'm still playing plenty of Battlefield. I haven't even beaten Doom yet. I'm like a fourth through Doom on PC. It's too many games to play. So, Days Gone. I'll just wait for it to be free on PlayStation Plus. And, well, I don't know. Maybe at the end of the year, because we'll see if it sells well. I have a feeling it might tank. Yeah, I mean, it needed a good review. Yeah, I think Radeon 7 is better than the 2080. I agree. Yeah, you bought Days Gone, and like I just said, I think a lot of people told me it's fun though. So, oh, I'm sure the visuals are good. I'm sure it'll look good on my new display. Yeah, full HDR10 is pretty great, guys. I think I will probably get an overpriced Ryzen 3000 as well, or even Threadripper. I mean, if there's one time to just go all out, this reminds me of like Sandy Bridge E or like an i7 920, right? Like those are the generations where if you have an i7 920 at 4 gigahertz, it still kind of works now. I feel like Zen's going to be the same thing, where Zen 2, where it's like, man, that's just it. But I might look into the Threadripper. If I hear rumors, right? And think of this. Threadripper Generation 1 performed, what do I want to say? Like 10% worse than Ryzen 3000 in gaming, maybe 15% worse. Especially at launch, I remember Threadripper having a solid performance loss in gaming at the launch reviews, even though it was received very well and it should have been. But then Threadripper 2000 fixed those latency issues that helped the 2700X in gaming, helped Threadripper even more. And I wonder if they'll do that again, right? And Threadripper is usually clocked faster. So if Threadripper 3000 doesn't have any IPC loss in gaming and is clock faster, I might just say fuck it. I might get the 24 core for $1,000 and just 8-channel memory. I might go for it if I can get it in a micro ATX case, which I believe you can. So yeah. But I don't want more than 24 cores because I've heard applications stop working with more than that. And after all, I do mostly use mine for gaming and editing. I don't need more than even 12 cores probably. But I'll spoil myself that one time. Make a PCB board upgradable for GPU chips. Well, that's how graphics cards work. I mean, I mean, they basically do, is what I would say. Now, the argument you might make is, why do I have to get a new waste money on a new cooler each time? And it's like, well, I don't know. That's just how the form factor worked out. But some people get custom coolers. Well, you're still wasting money though, right? So why don't they use the same type of chip? They just tend to be bigger and use more energy, so it makes more sense to give them their own VRMs and phases and all of that. I mean, think of how much more beefy a motherboard would have to be if it was just the die and the RAM sticks that went into the graphics card portion. Um, but eventually, I think it'll be mostly APU, so that is kind of how it will work. Yeah, Ryzen 3rd gen will be in notebooks. They'll just come out a little later. The fact is they're more efficient than Intel. And so the problem with getting into laptops is just getting through Intel's iron grip on that goddamn market, right? It's not that they have way better laptop chips most of the time now. Yeah, and I'm never going to use gaming mode for Threadripper. I think that I actually agree with Hardware Unboxed that they don't switch to gaming mode when testing it, because who's going to go into the BIOS every time and switch its setting? I'm not doing that. You kidding me? I got stuff to do. I'm not switching that out. And frankly, it's not worth it if you're gaming, right? Like, how often is that extra 10% worth it? Just play the game. That's my opinion, though. Yeah, I that's what I'm saying too, is I don't want to have to switch to gaming mode if I get a Threadripper. How long before we have photorealistic games? PS5. I'm calling it right now. There will be near photorealistic games on PS5. I thought Killzone Shadowfall single player had portions that looked almost photorealistic at the time. Now, looking back, it doesn't. It actually still looks really good. But look, the PS5, let's put it this way. PS4 Pro looks incredible, even though it's running, 30 frames or less, right? But it looks incredible when it's doing that. And you have some games on PC now that look almost photorealistic. You do. So, and they run at quadruple the frame rate of the PS4 Pro. um, and with that in mind, the PS5 is probably going to be 8 times stronger than the well, wait, like 10 times stronger than the PS4 base, but like, I don't know, 4 or 6 times stronger than the PS4 Pro. I mean, that's enough to switch to 4K and probably get some photorealistic games. I do think so, especially games like Detroit, which almost looks photorealistic. Imagine that running on something 6 times stronger. Like, I think you're going to get some photorealistic games next gen, but not all of them. And sometimes I think people will stop caring if it's photorealistic, right? Like, does it need, like, right? Like, does it always need to be? Probably not. Also remember, there's other things I think they're going to do next gen with the more powerful processor than just photorealism. I think we're going to finally get an upgrade in AI and stuff. Yeah, I think BF5 and BF1 can look pretty great in the single player too. Yeah, I know. I think like we're on, but the difference between almost photorealistic and photorealistic is a big leap. So I don't think we're getting, and it still will have problems. I think we're getting near. I think going from now and then across the uncanny valley is going to be hard. So I think next gen you're going to have games that just look like now, except at a higher resolution, higher textures, much smoother, with better AI and frame rates. Or you're going to have some games that don't need the highest frame rates in AI, and those will be near photorealism. But getting to near photorealism over this uncanny valley we're about to go into is going to be hard. And I think yeah. And someone, I realized I didn't answer someone's question. Someone asked me, how will GPUs progress? Look, I think whatever comes after Navi will probably be twice as powerful. Like, we're going to get to 40 teraflop cards that are like 4 times stronger than a 2080 Ti in about 5 years. And I think things might slow down then. I'm not convinced. But I think the good news is I think that'll be just about enough, especially if they find a way to do ray tracing efficiently where we can just barely get photorealism. So I hope. Of course, I want 480 hertz gaming. So that's what I would put my money on. But oh, I'm sure it does. I thought Metal Gear Solid 5 looked photorealistic at times. Yeah, the character models in BF5 look incredible. Same with, look, Metal Gear Solid, all of them have looked incredible, I think. Even the old ones. Well, except for the first one. First one looks pretty goddamn old, but Metal Gear Solid 1 on PS1, if you play it, it's like, ugh. It's a fun game still, but man, those controls are horrible and the graphics are like. So one thing you have to say about PS1 3D games, the N64 was more powerful. Man, that PS1's 3D games, some of them are some pixelated looking 3D models. Ray tracing on PS5. Watch my ray tracing video. I talk about how don't be surprised if a game has it, but don't be surprised if it's not worth it. And that's still my opinion. But maybe they'll get it working in an efficient way. What I've heard is that CPUs can run ray tracing much more efficiently than a graphics card can anyways. So with that in mind, I mean, you know, with that in mind, it wouldn't surprise me if like the launch Killzone game, which I think will be a thing, uses ray tracing. I just don't know how much it's going to be and if it will be worth it, but it'll look cool. I don't know. Yeah, Intel says they plan to do a lot of fucking things in 2020. Sorry, someone said they plan to launch Xeons in 2020. I'm not mad at you. I really don't believe anything Intel says. And I'm not saying it as a fanboy. I'm saying they've been wrong for 5 years in a row. Someone it's not even about lying. If someone gets something wrong 5 times in a row, why would you keep listening to them? Will Intel have 10 nanometer server chips? Maybe some low power ones. I could see it next year for sure. Will they be better than their 14 nanometer chips though? Because that's the prediction, is they might not be. Hope my channel grows. Yeah, me too. I mean, it's been incredible the amount of support I've gotten. Again, this quality increase, you'll see. I'm trying to set up interviews with other channels, specifically not an Apple fan, just so you guys know, and some other people. Yeah, let him know that you want to have an interview with me if you want him to. But we've been talking, and I'll move up the list of tech channels as much as I can. You know, that's something I want to do. I never plan on doing a ton of benchmarking. When I do benchmarking, I want to test something, right? Like color compression. Because I remember the HD 7000 series, and I remember seeing articles back then that they accused the 7000 series of not being lossless. And so I want to check architectures going back to the 6000 series with AMD and Fermi with Nvidia, and see on a HDR OLED screen, can we tell the difference between the color? That type of thing. I'm from the Midwest, all over the Midwest. Yeah, ray tracing will be pretty cool for indie games. I agree with that. I did see that on Minecraft. Made me want to start playing it again a little bit. And do you also do the PC parts used hustle? Yeah, I do. Most of my mining cards were used. So, well, not anymore. I've sold most of them away now. But yeah, I do. For my desktop, I'm not going to because I'm spoiling myself. I'll buy all used for that just because I think I'm worth it. But for my mining, yeah. 290X for $140 beginning of 2017, if you can believe it. Yeah, that thing paid for itself. I bought up a bunch of those. Yeah, I know. He's like, my dog's like looking at like a rabbit out there or something. Do I think the video will try to backtrack on ray tracing? So this is a good question. And this will probably be one of the last ones. I don't think Nvidia can backtrack on tracing. Almost said racism. I don't think Nvidia will backtrack on ray tracing right away because I don't think they can. But I've said several times in my Nvidia analyses that I think they will tone it down, relatively speaking, to their architecture. So there will always be more ray tracing cores every gen, at least for the next 2 gens, right? 3000 series end of this year and maybe a 4000 series next year. I think they will continue to keep ray tracing and make it stronger. But if they add more CUDA cores and more tensor and RT cores, they might add less than they add more CUDA cores and bandwidth and save more die space. And if over time they'll phase it out if they think it's not worth increasing. However, if an AMD fucks up, they'll just double the ray tracing cores and only increase CUDA cores by 20%. And then they'll say double the performance. Did you see that? We doubled the performance to the 3000 series or something. That's the two ways they can go, but I don't think they can get rid of it right away. They can't get rid of it right away. They would look ridiculous. And frankly, they're selling server cards to gamers right now, and that's a benefit to them for as long as they can get away with it. I don't know if UFD Tech would like to link up with me. I'll tell you this, though. If he reached out to me and wanted to do a discussion, I would absolutely do it. But I shit on him pretty hard in one of my early videos. So I bet he doesn't like me. Let's put it that way. And I've shit on him before, too, before I made this channel. But here's the thing, though. I would definitely talk to him if he reached out to me. And I bet we'd have a lot in common. I would have no problem talking to him. You know, we do think similar things about a lot of subjects, but yeah. You feel free to tell him. No, I don't think he's a bad person either. I said I would talk to him. I don't want to tell you because I was an asshole in that video. You can find it. That's the problem. Some people like that, and I try to stay away from that when I can. It's in the rants, though. I mean, I'll tell you. I didn't really did I specifically shit on him, though? I don't know if I did. I think I did a little bit. Yeah, that's what it was. I edited that video a lot, by the way, guys. I'll let you know that was like 10 minutes longer, and I was like cutting out swear words and mean, like I cut out a lot of it. So I was like, that's not good. I didn't need to say that. That was bad when I made it, but yeah. Yeah, I know. No, and that's why I have a lot of people ask me to do more rant videos, and I just say no. Because I don't like channels that do that. I did it once or twice, and I'll probably do it again, but it's gonna be like once every few months about a specific thing when I'm sure I'm right. But I don't like adding more hate really overall. So yeah, you don't expect more from that from me. Interview with Jim? Yeah, I'm not reaching out to that guy right away, though. I mean, he's huge, right? I get a lot of my analysis ideas from him, and I've been following him for years. Hey, look, if any of you are talking to him, ask him if he'll do one with me, but I've never seen him do that before. And frankly, I'm too nervous to ask him because he's too big of a channel, right? I do have a Discord server for my Patreons. It should be sent to you if you become a Patreon member. It should instantly send it. And if not, I typically put out a new link to Patreon members every now and then. Between DDR4 and GDR6, I mean, I would say you might want to just Google that yourself. Graphics memory does a different method of lowering latency and doubling speed. I know Cortex is too. I'd love to do one with Cortex as well, but again, I worry he's too big of a channel. Although he's reached out to me before, right? So maybe he would talk to me. All of these people you're mentioning. So if you go to my channel, I have a modules for other channels I recommend to people. All of them. That's what I would do. I agree. A podcast with not an Apple fan and good old gamer would be a very good podcast. Just like an end of week. Honestly, though, it's not like Sacred Symbols. I would think it would be you want to do it every 2 weeks. I don't think there's enough news in this space. You wouldn't want to become that podcast where they just talk about i7s every week. That'd get boring. I think every 2 weeks, maybe. Well, I think I actually need to walk the dogs before it gets dark here. So, and then after that, I want to actually edit together. Um, I want to edit together these this monitor review. I I did all of the filming yesterday. I put down tons of notes today before this video. I organized the notes. I think I know the format I'm going to go in for it. It's going to be a lot of work though. At the very least, what I can promise is the unboxing video will be out early next week, and I plan to have both parts of the review out by the end of next week. So, again, if you want to get long answers that I'll see, premium Patreons can. I put this up a few days on my Patreon, locked for only them to answer questions. They can also make video suggestions that I'll ask about. Yeah, I know it is. I'm keeping the mic, even though it's not in 4K right now. And support me on Patreon. When you share my content, it helps. Like, subscribe, tell other people, all these other channels. Please tell them. Yeah, I mean, I'll do an interview with any of them. If Cortex reaches out to me, it's going to be in a day. It's when he's free, is when I will talk to that guy for an hour. Any of these people. Otherwise, I mean, yep, thank you for your support. This will be uploaded, and yeah, thanks everyone. I'll see you at the end of next month, and there'll be many more videos.